Well, hey everyone, and welcome to episode number 30 of the Other Six Podcast. My name is Chad Boak, and I am your host. Joining me in the studio today, a couple of special guests. First, our Next Generations pastor and the man with two first names, Justin Daniel.
I actually have three first names.
Oh yeah, what's your middle name?
Oh, I'm not telling.
I was really hoping it was going to be like Smith. You know?
No, it's actually Wade. So like
Wade, okay.
Justin, Wade,
Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could just be three brothers. But...
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also joining us in the studio today, special guest, our ministry's pastor and author of the recent study on Boaz's life called Don't Be Ruthless, PJ Beaver.
Nice.
PJ, how are you today, sir?
And that is available wherever you consume your books.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to see you guys today, man. How was your weekend?
Man, my weekend was great. So we really spent the weekend kind of getting the house in order. I know that doesn't sound like fun, but when like my home isn't like in order, I feel like I can't really like rest and relax.
Sure.
And so we spent, I got to turn couches over. Do you know what I'm talking? Like
okay.
that kind of cleaning.
Sure.
Flip couches. I found all sorts of my kids' toys all over the place. I probably secretly threw away some too. So
that's what cleaning is. When
they
you
don't
have
listen
kids,
to this
right?
podcast.
they don't.
Right?
Yeah. No,
Right,
they don't
okay.
listen. No, they don't.
That's right.
That would have opened up something
they
for my
secretly
family.
found some. Anyway, they're way in the trash.
Right. PJ, how was your weekend, buddy?
It was good, man. We got a lot of things in order as well, and we look forward to Trash Day on the weekends because when you have a whole bunch of trash, the city of Montgomery has like these claws that will pick up like huge amounts of trash, like at the schools.
Yeah.
And so we took a bunch over to Halcyon Elementary, and Jesse was like, "Are they gonna have the claw?" I was like, "Let's go, buddy!" Yeah. And I mean, they clawed up and trashed it.
It's like you've been training for that your entire life in arcade games, right?
Yeah.
Well, what's wild is it was kind of emotional for Katie because we set our crib by the street.
Oh.
Like it's been through three kids, and anyway, so that like it's gone, guys.
That's
it's
right.
gone. That means
it's done.
that means
no more.
You're done.
No more.
That's right. That's right. That is a
Finished.
freeing feeling. It's a good sign.
right.
Well, Chad, how was yours, man?
Yeah.
Man, it was good. It was actually pretty eventful. All right, before I jump into my weekend, obviously we have to acknowledge that Matt and Adam are not here today. We miss Matt and Adam, but they are taking a well-deserved break, getting some time off, and so we'll miss them. But I'm happy to be here with you guys. But no, my weekend was good. It was very eventful, actually. We added a new member to our family this weekend in the form.
Do you need that
I
crib?
would have given you a
Yeah,
crib.
you needed a crib.
I would have
Yeah,
given you a crib.
Oh, missed it.
Yeah, no, not quite. In the form of a puppy.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So we already had one dog, a boxer named Dog Vader. Obviously in my house, I like the Star Wars puns when it comes to naming animals. And but Lena, my oldest, she never asked for anything. She never asked for anything. Now Ava, my youngest, you go anywhere and it's can have that. But Lena never asked for anything. And she has been wanting a puppy for like some time. Like she's like, Daddy, I want a dog for me. I want my dog. And she just asked so sweet. And she's been saving up her money. I said, well, sweetheart, what kind of dog do you want? And she says, I want a Bernedoodle. And I had no idea what a Bernedoodle was. Apparently, it is a cross between a Bernese mountain dog and a poodle, which both of these different dogs are, very smart. You combine them, very, very smart. They don't shed, super nice, and they think a lot of them when it comes to how much they sell them.
Sure. Yeah.
And so anyway, Christy and I, we were praying, and we were just like, okay, we'd love to be able to do this for her. Her birthday's in a couple of months. We'd love to be able to surprise her. And this past week, we were looking at breeders. God just opened a door.
Really?
And and it was a family that breeds these dogs that had some that were 10 weeks old, which is a little bit older than you would normally pick up a puppy. Well, when they were in the process of finding buyers for this new litter of puppies, the dad's mother had passed away, and so they had to go back. And by the time they had gotten back after the funeral and everything, they didn't have any buyers. And so they had drastically reduced the cost of these puppies. And honestly, it was just God showing up. It was God showing up for us. And I really appreciate. So we kept it a surprise. So Friday night we drove up there. What we told Lena is I was going to look at some Star Wars stuff, and she totally bought it. And so we drove up to Clanton, which is where these folks were. And so she walked in, and I mean, now what was really funny is earlier in the day, she had made a PowerPoint presentation on why she should be allowed to have a Bernedoodle puppy. That's right. And so she walked in and she sees this puppy and she stops and she's just gobsmacked. And I said, "Baby, your presentation was really good." And so she got her puppy. And for our folks that are watching online, I'll throw up a picture, of the puppy. So this is Brandy. She named her Brandy, which doesn't have a Star Wars pun to it. But I'm calling her the Brandylorian.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. So I was wondering
Saw that
when,
coming.
because you told me about, you sent me a picture of
Yeah.
it earlier, and as I was looking at it and you told me the name Brandy, I'm like, okay, so there's got to be something Star Wars here that I'm missing.
Right.
Like, I don't quite get,
No,
I
no.
don't get it. Like,
Growing up, I had a puppy named Brandy that actually belonged to my mom, and so Lena just knew that name, and so she really liked it. So anyway, so we have a new. But no, she had me send that picture to you. She said, "Daddy, will you show this to Mr. Justin?" Because she loves being in the student ministry
That's
and,
awesome.
and loves what you guys do. So she was really excited. So we had an eventful weekend. Not a whole lot of sleep with a new puppy.
Sure.
And so not quite as sleepless as a new child, but there was still quite a bit of taking her out and in the middle of the night.
look,
and all that kind of
anything
stuff.
that interrupts you in the middle of the night.
Right.
Uh,
But hey, Lena's doing a good job. She's being very
Good.
responsible. So please keep teaching the students the way you are because she's being very responsible with this new puppy. But anyway, well, moving on from that. So good weekends for everybody, and spring break, depending on when you're listening to this, is underway or is coming up, and we've been in this new series called Replenish, and I've really enjoyed the series, Justin. I thought you did a great job. A week ago, kicking the series off, talking about studying God's Word. And PJ, this past Sunday, you had the chance to talk about fellowship. And so I want to just kind of go ahead and dive in. So you quoted Rick Warren. Purpose-Driven Life is where most folks know him from. I mean, I think it's like after the Bible, the best-selling book in the history of the world or something like that. Yeah. So, but you quoted Rick. You said that real fellowship is experiencing life together. So what does that mean, and what does that look like day to day to experience life together?
Well, I like that Rick distilled that definition into something as simple as what is fellowship? Fellowship is experiencing life together. And honestly, that's very simple, but it allows for a lot of different experiences.
Sure.
And so we can fellowship with certain people at different levels, but it definitely conveys that we experience some time, and there are some shared experiences in life. So it's not that we're just card carriers of a club or that we've paid our dues, but no, we've been through it with someone else, and I believe that is a hallmark of fellowship.
Yeah, Justin, we hear this phrase all the time. We talk especially about our life groups, like do life together. What does that mean to you to do life together?
I think doing life together means connecting with other people who are in the same season of life that you're in. It is going about your everyday business, but connecting in relationship along the way. Sure. I think oftentimes we isolate ourselves a little bit, and not only that, but it takes twice as long sometimes to do things together as if you would just get them done by yourself, right?
Right.
But I think doing life together is valuing relationship,
right?
And so when it goes to going throughout your day or raising kids or anything that you have going on that other people are going through as well, it's drawing together, or I would say around central themes of life.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up there, because I think most of us, when we think about needing relationships, it's like the super low points in our lives or the super high points. Maybe it's the death of a family member, or maybe it's the birth of a new child, or getting a new puppy, whatever it may be. But I think just the ho-hum of everyday life, the grind that can be everyday life, and that can be, it's good and bad. I think that's where I've felt. I mean, certainly in those times where I've been, down in the valley, it's meant the world to me to have friends and family there. But I also think that just having someone that can encourage you daily, in your everyday life.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point of this replenish thing, right? It's the fact that you don't wait till the low points and you don't wait to the high points to celebrate.
Sure.
It's connecting every day, or finding an avenue or a way to connect in relationship with others more frequently than just the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
There's a replenishing nature to our souls when it comes to spending time with other people, even if you're an introvert like me, right? I tend to hang out with the crowd of people that goes, I don't like people, they'd say, right? But honestly, it just means that my connection level is with less people than with more people. There's still a desire to connect in relationship with other people. Complete isolation is lonely, and I think everybody experiences that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, PJ, why do you think, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but why do you think relationships are so important to replenishing our souls?
Well, I think that it really models what what God set up from the very beginning. Because in the beginning, you have a triune God. So the whole idea of life began in community, and that has just trickled down all the way to where we are today. And so it just is replenishing because it's right.
Yeah, so I love this idea of, the relationship, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. And that's obviously a very good thing in how God has given us the privilege, really, of being able to be in a relationship with others and have that be something that encourages and replenishes our soul. All right, so shift gears a little bit. PJ, you said something during your message. You talked about authenticity. And I love what you said about how being authentic in a relationship is not licensed to be a jerk, basically. How, we all have those people in our lives that they'll say hey man, I just want to let you know your hair looks terrible. I'm just trying to be real.
Just
and
real.
It's
I'm just being honest.
Yeah, just being honest. And
I'm serving you.
Could you be a little less honest? I would really appreciate that. That'd be great. So I want to talk about this idea of authenticity in relationships. And first off, why do you, PJ, and then I'll ask Justin the same question, why do you think that people, and us as a people, we tend to be so unauthentic in relationships at times?
I think it's a defensive posture.
Okay.
That being authentic, it just requires a lot of vulnerability. And the longer you do life, odds are that you've tried to be authentic. You've tried to bare your soul, so to speak, with somebody, being authentic, being real, and you might have been hurt. And so it's really hard to get to that place of just being real. And it takes a lot of trust. To be sure, which feeds into real. True fellowship, but it's so important because then you get to be known and know people for who they really are.
Sure. Yeah. So I like what you said there about how sometimes we can be unauthentic because of a past hurt, and so I think it's important. I mean, Justin, what do you think about this? That we work to heal through those situations, but one of the best ways to heal is through community, right?
Right.
So why do you think folks can tend to be unauthentic, and then what do you think are some ways where we can work past that?
Yeah. So when it comes to connecting in community and being authentic with one another, I think it takes not only a level of trust, but I think it's somebody has to initiate. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think it's being brave a little bit,
right?
Having the courage to be the one to initiate that, no matter the cost,
right?
And I think when other people see you being authentic with the way in which you struggle or the different things that you have going on in life, they're more likely to really represent a more authentic side of themselves as well. So, I think when it comes to the reason why people generally just don't do that is because of the fact that we all want to look like we have it together.
Right.
We all want to look like, man, that everything's okay. I mean, it's the same reason why we don't post back pictures on social media, right?
Right.
So I mean, we want people to see the best side of us. We talk about also making a first impression. A lot of times, you want people to see the best side of you. You don't want people to see the messy you. But the reality is we're all a mess. Every one of us are messed up. And I mean, there are. I think when we can get to a place where we can truly connect with one another in authentic ways and relate to one another, I think what happens is that's where you really do start to build real relationships with people.
Right. No, I think that's so good. And obviously, there's probably some folks that are listening to this podcast that would say, "Man, I would love to be able to be in those kinds of relationships, but I don't even know how to get started." PJ, what would you say is one of the best ways for folks, if you're craving that fellowship, if you're craving real connections with others, what's one of the easiest and best ways to do that?
Well, I mentioned at the end of the sermon is just to invite somebody to go and grab a coffee or lunch or breakfast and just have a conversation just about what's going on I think that it's a little weird when people come like a little too strong.
Right.
Like, hey, I just met you and I'm bearing my soul.
Right,
Just
right,
trying to
right,
be
right.
authentic. It's
Right.
like, whoa, like we went from 0 to 90 really, really quick.
Right.
Yeah. Read the room. Right.
Yeah. Be
Exactly.
aware. Be aware. And I'm not saying that you need to be guarded all the way through, but just take that first step. Get to know folks.
Right.
Hey, PJ, I just met you. What's your deepest, darkest
Yeah,
sin?
yeah. Exactly.
The answer is spiders.
That's right.
That's the biggest
But
fear.
and then have patience. Have
Yeah.
patience. I
That's
think
really
that
good.
people just kind of dismiss fellowship, that it's not something that they can experience because they don't experience it right away.
Right.
And so just have patience. It's something that is worth the wait.
Right.
And to be sure, there's not like a, hey, at 14 days you have arrived.
Sure,
There's
right,
not
sure.
like there's a it's going to be different for each relationship.
Right.
But it's worth just making that simple ask, working on being authentic, and then staying committed to the journey.
Yeah.
I think about how we made friends when we were in school, right? Like generally when it comes to making friends, there's things that you initially have in common. And I think sometimes being connected with a church, you feel like you have to be friends with everybody.
Right.
I mean, you can be polite to everybody, but to expect intimate relationships with everybody, I just think that's unrealistic.
Sure.
But,
Well, even Jesus didn't do that, right?
Right.
Jesus
Yeah,
had, it was like the crowd, and then the 12,
12,
and then the 3. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And so, when it comes to us developing relationships with others, I think I met my first really good friend in middle school, 6th grade, first day of 6th grade, terrified, okay? We all walk into a gym, and they have us sit on the bleachers before we go, and I'm walking up the bleachers, and I kick an 8th grader's lunch underneath the bleachers.
What
and
grade were you in?
I was 6th grade.
Oh,
Oh man! And my
it's
first,
over.
I kicked an 8th grader's lunch, and he turns around and he cusses me out. And a guy named Matt was sitting behind me, and he saw the whole thing, and he laughed at it. I laughed at it. We had a similar shared experience. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was
Sure,
just
we
one
were
of those.
doing life together.
We were doing life.
Hey.
Right.
Yeah.
And they got beat up together, too.
That's right. Yeah. And so, I mean, of course, I crawled under
benefit
the
of struggling.
bleachers and
Right.
I dusted it
Yeah.
off. And hey, here's
As we were stuck
Here's
in the
your
locker
Lunchable.
side by side, we became best friends.
friends.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Really close quarters, really kind of help
Yeah, absolutely.
develop intimacy and good relationships and that kind of thing. But, I think about a lot of people want good relationships, but they with people within the church, but yet they're not connected within the church.
Sure.
And I think that's the other thing too. There's a level of going, okay, you got to be present to be
Right.
able to connect in relationship with the other
Right.
people. You not only have to be present, but you have to engage in conversation.
Right.
And we have to realize that there's different levels of relationship with different people, and there's, like you said, there's steps to getting in those relationships. Right?
Sure.
There's the casual, hey, how's it going? My name is Justin, it's good to see you this week. To, man, how have you guys been doing? Like getting to hear their, how their week talking, getting them to talk about themselves and their kids and all sorts of stuff. Finding commonalities,
Right.
it's connecting with other people who are in the same season of life that you are. It's really helpful, right?
Yeah.
Play dates. I can't tell you how many excuses I've made to kind of get to know people by, hey, your kids, y'all want to do a park day or something like that and
Right.
go hang out. So just finding those things, being present, being consistent. I think what's so wild is you have people who come into the church, and it's like they come in and there's a level of, hey, I want everybody to be my best friend, but you yourself aren't willing to kind of step in and
Sure.
develop those relationships yourself, right? You're
Right.
wanting everyone to drop everything for you, but there's also, hey, look, I've got to give something here too.
Right.
And so being consistent, being involved, finding ways to connect with other people. I know, that's what life groups and things like that are all about, right? Like all those different avenues. And I think that those are the things that can connect us in relationship with one another.
Yeah, and you said an interesting thing there. I think that, developing relationships involves a certain level of vulnerability.
Yeah.
It does.
Letting folks in and a little bit of risk of being hurt, emotionally. But something else you said there, one of the things I hear from people a lot of times, especially adults, not really kids. Kids make friends everywhere, but
Right.
adults, hey, I'm in my late 20s, early 30s. I have no idea how to make friends. So PJ, let me ask you this. Do we as a church have a mechanism, that connects people where they can make those friends and develop those relationships, at an easy level to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. The mechanism is called life groups.
Okay.
And it's simple enough to make a commitment, and this is all by design. So we have 2 different semesters, fall and spring, and usually people's lives kind of look different in those different semesters. Sure. But make a commitment to meet with a group of people over that fall semester, that spring semester. And naturally, there are going to be folks within that circle, within that life group, that you're going to connect at a different level with.
Sure.
And my challenge for everyone, even when I was sharing on Sunday, was, hey, invite somebody to go grab a coffee together, invite somebody to breakfast, and you have an opportunity to get to know them in that circle, and then you can go to that next step. And the shared the common denominator is Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we're around this table.
Right.
That's why people are listening to this podcast. Somehow or another, Jesus is the common denominator. So why not build a friendship that is based around that? And it's an extreme benefit of life groups, and something that the 3 of us, we get the privilege of playing, matchmaker.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm doing little air quotes for those
Yeah.
of you who are listening, just audio only.
Yeah, we get to meet people that have never met and go, hey man, these guys would be great for us.
Yeah, you're gonna enjoy meeting these folks over here, and you see these relationships and friendships develop, and it's fantastic because, like I mentioned in the sermon, I believe that Christ followers, Christians, should be the most replenished people on the face of the earth, and God uses fellowships to do that, to fill us up.
Yeah, it's so funny because not only connecting with people who have shared experiences and people who are like you in the same season of life, it's been amazing when you center a relationship on Jesus Christ. God brings all different kinds of people into your life, older, younger, people who are just completely different from you. There have been when it comes to friends that I've had, if we just met anywhere else other than church, we would not be friends.
Right. Yeah.
And it's really neat that when you have a relationship with Jesus, you can have nothing in common and everything in common at the same time.
Yeah.
It's really cool how that works. So not only not only when it comes to being connected and making friends, is it like developing relationships when you were younger by commonality, but what's so beautiful is that when the gospel really infiltrates your life and you are working and serving together, what flourishes out of that is something really beautiful.
All right, so Justin, so kind of related to what you just said there, and PJ, I'm going to direct the question to you, and Justin, if you have something to add to this, I would love to hear it. You mentioned one of the benefits of fellowship. One of them was struggling together, this idea of struggling together. So first off, help me understand how that's a benefit, and then can you give me some examples of that?
Yeah, so two aspects of struggling together are really beneficial. I'm sure there's others, but the first is when you know that there are other people who are going through a hard season. For myself, it enables me to kind of shift perspective into, hey, I can do this, and I'm not alone, and I can endure. I can endure through the struggle.
Right.
And there is a benefit in working together through something that's hard or demanding or challenging to actually see it through with other people. And honestly, I don't think I always have the endurance, discipline, whatever the adjective might be, to actually see it through solo.
Sure.
But when I'm doing it with other folks, man, there's a benefit in struggling together.
Right.
The other is there's an encouragement in struggling together. I can say for I'll give an example. Like when Hannah and I had our kids, and we're like, man, we didn't get instructions for
Right,
this.
yeah.
They let me go home with this?
This is difficult. This is hard.
We left the how-to book at the hospital.
Yeah, like sleep training. This is a real deal.
Yeah.
Like this is what in the world? And as we were talking with other young couples, we realized that we weren't alone. We weren't the only parents who weren't getting it right all the time.
Right.
And there was a benefit in struggling together. I was like, oh, you're having a hard time with this too? Breathe,
Yeah.
take a breath. Mine's not broken. Like,
Right.
like let's struggle together. It leads to endurance. It leads to encouragement. I kind of worded it that way just
Sure.
to kind of get everybody's attention. But
No, I thought that was really good.
It helps to struggle together.
I thought that was really good. And I've seen that in my life. Back in 2014, I actually did an Ironman triathlon in Chattanooga. Which, do you know how to tell if someone's an Ironman? They'll tell you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And people ask, was
Sure.
that a difficult race? And the answer is like, yeah, the race was tough, but like the training was way harder. And so, but I had a training partner, a guy that's actually played guitar here a couple times, a guy named Stephen Frisbee. He and I trained together, and we had other folks that kind of trained with us. And our motto for our training group was accountability through ridicule. So like if you didn't show up, we were going to make fun of you for it. But all kidding aside, it was the group, the struggle together, what you're talking about, that made me get up at 4:30 a.m. to go swim at the Y or to do these bike rides or these runs or whatever it is. And I'll never forget, Steve and I, during the race, we were at about mile 20, and man, we were about as low as it got of the marathon. It was low. And we just stopped and we prayed for each other, man. And it was an incredible experience, and God, gave us that victory. But when you talk about struggle, like, I always think about, showing up at those early mornings. I mean, you talked about this a little bit with the F3 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's lots of cold mornings you would not get out of bed and go work out if these guys weren't waiting on you there to encourage you, in this process.
Yeah, that worked for you, not for me.
Well, don't worry, the ridicule still happens.
Oh, that's right.
I'm kidding. All right, so obviously we talked a lot about replenishing relationships. Those that we love to be around. Family, friends, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully, coworkers.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this: how do we keep our souls replenished when those relationships aren't so replenishing? When we have to be around, maybe it's family or some friends or a friend of a friend or coworkers that we don't necessarily. We don't find that to be replenishing. How do we not let those relationships bring us down?
Yeah, that's a great question. Initially, I think that those don't need to be our only relationships.
Right.
But we can benefit from having relationships that are life-giving. And I think that so much of our society has really missed out on the benefit of fellowshipping within the Christian circles of the local church.
Sure.
And they have had to engage in those relationships that are like their coworkers, and some of those have been draining. Some of those have really been hard. But because they haven't had to come to church, they've really missed out. And I would say, like, if you have a hard, demanding job, etc., man, get plugged in. Find something find a relationship that has that common denominator of Jesus Christ. Sure. Get plugged into a life group. There are tons of opportunities here at Vaughn Forest, and find something that is actually life-giving, so that you have something, you are filled up, you are replenished, and then you can give on those other relationships that are actually demanding.
Right.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I think one, being aware of the relationships that do drain you. Like, I think sometimes we go into situations and we leave and we're like, why am I so frustrated? And why am I so tired? Why is it exhausting?
I'm angry when I leave.
I'm always sweating and I'm all
Right.
Anyway, that might be another problem. But the thing is know those relationships and just realize you're going to give in them.
Yeah.
Like, just don't expect anything different.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, just go, hey, look, this is a relationship that I'm going to give, because here's the thing. Like you said, you're life-giving to them. They might not necessarily be life-giving to you, and it just might be one of those things where they need you.
Where God's put you in their life to be a source of replenishment.
Absolutely. So recognizing what kind of relationship it is, and then know that, hey, look, I'm gonna get mine somewhere else,
right? And
I'm gonna be okay with that.
Yeah.
And I think going into it that way, you get to go into the situation or the relationship loving the individual than feeling annoyed.
Yeah. So Scripture tells us, as much as you're able to be at peace with everyone. are we called to be best friends with everybody, or what are some things that maybe we can do when we experience those kind of draining relationships? How can we maybe move forward? Are there ways to move them into replenishing relationships?
Sometimes maybe.
Yeah.
I really just think it depends.
Okay.
I think it depends. I mean, sometimes it also depends upon how the Lord grows them and the Lord grows here. Here's the thing. I found that when it comes to, I don't know if but I found that when it comes to these kind of relationships, at first, when you admit the fact that, hey, this is going to be just hard for me, and then you end up sacrificing, the Lord gives you an affection for that person. It might not necessarily be life-giving in a sense, but you have an overwhelming love for that individual that you wouldn't have. Does that make sense? So it's not as draining in the sense that, oh, this is a burden. No, I really enjoy hanging out with them. They're just not necessarily as life-giving to me. Right. And there's been several people where I've had the opportunity to just spend time with them throughout the week, and it's been sacrificial in nature. But what's been so great is I come to the other end of that, and God has given me an affection for them, and I would call them one of my best friends, although I give more in that relationship. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And kind of what I heard you say there, sometimes something as simple as a shift in perspective on the relationship can make it not quite so draining, or maybe make it a little more life-giving for you. Now, that's really good. PJ, your last point this past Sunday, you talked about frequency in relationships and how important frequency can be. So I want to talk a little bit about why that is important, and maybe what has the last 2 years shown us about why that is so important.
Yeah, frequency is important, and I mentioned briefly in the sermon that you need to have a level of commitment. In other words, you're not going to be challenged from listening to this podcast or the sermon and say, I'm going to give it a shot, and then just push away from the table because your one shot, the one time that you actually were a little vulnerable or you pursued fellowship, it didn't work for you, whatever that means. But you have to make a commitment to keep at it and keep going. There has to be a frequency involved, a rhythm, if you will.
Sure.
And that's how relationships are built.
Right.
It doesn't matter if I was just married to Hannah, but I never spent any time with her, we would not have any intimacy in our relationship. Right. It just wouldn't exist. We have to, even our busy schedule, we have to make time to just spend time with one another, not just do the things that we have to do as being parents and business owners and all these different things, right? But we have got to actually spend time together, and it's that frequency that leads to true fellowship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been using the term spiritual habits, but, I think, a long time ago, they would have been considered like spiritual disciplines in a sense. And nobody thinks about relationship as a discipline, because either one, you get something from it or you don't. But I tell you, there are moments where, no, I need to do this because it's good for me.
Sure.
Do you know? And so putting myself in situations where, it's hard to get out of the house sometimes, right? It's hard to get yourself to a group but when you get there, you love it, right? You love being a part of it. You love being involved. And so when it comes to, these habits that we develop, I think the more we interact, the deeper relationships go, and you're able to, that's when you really start getting fruit from those relationships. And so there is, some people, my wife, she's wired to where put me in a crowd, put me in the middle of it. I can't wait to see everybody. She just, she'll hug you and all sorts of stuff. And me, you got to drag me out of the house, you got to drag. But here's the thing, I've never regretted it the minute that I got out. Do you know what I'm saying? And so there is a level of just going, hey, you know what? I'm going to be disciplined, or I want to develop this habit of fellowship. Yeah.
No, I think that's really good. And one of the silver linings I think that come out of the COVID season was we don't take for granted anymore the fact that we can gather. Especially as a church. Yeah. And we, of course, we all had Zoom meetings, we had online. Those are great options when you can't do the first thing, but there is something unique about when God's people are gathered here, to worship Him, to praise Him, to learn about Him. There's something unique about being able to gather with our family. I remember, I think it was Mother's Day around the lockdown, and my parents had come over for like a socially distanced dinner, and Lena, my daughter, just ran up and hugged my mom, like didn't care. We're not gonna worry about that. And my mom, got tears in her eyes. My mom's a pretty stoic person, but she just said, sometimes you don't know what you're missing. Sometimes you don't know until it's gone. And so I thought that was really interesting. So I think this idea of frequency, I think it's so important. And Adam talked about in a previous episode about how, sometimes the things that we should hold the highest value on, making sure there's frequency of, those are the first things that get sacrificed.
Yeah.
When something comes up with family, or whether it's sports, or whether, it's just a job, work, or whatever it may be, we sacrifice church, when really church is one of the last things we should sacrifice, not because we're trying to get our numbers up here. I mean, certainly we want as many folks here to hear about the gospel of Jesus as we can, but we know the importance of God's people gathering on a regular basis, like His Word, tells us to.
Well, and here's the thing. I think that there was, even to this day, there's this idea that I can be a Lone Ranger Christian, know, and the reality is no, you can't. Even when Paul was writing to the churches, the assumption is that he was writing to the gathering. He was writing to the group. It's it should be taken within that. You can apply it to the individual, but it should be taken within the context. If he's communicating to a church, he's communicating to a body of believers who have relationships with one another, and who are having actually issues with having relationships with one another. Right? We get the majority of our content of Paul solving relationship problems. Right? So that tells you that this is hard. This isn't something that just like naturally, but it's something that we should do. Where not to forsake the fellowship of the gathering, right? Not to forsake that. And so, I think we have this ideal of, I don't want the drama. Get in there. Get some of that drama, right?
It's messy. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, and ultimately the source of, us thinking this Lone Ranger Christian mentality, I like that term, it's pride. The source of it's pride. We think we know a better way than God. We think we can do it our own, when God has, in His Word clearly said, no, you can't. You can't do it on your own. And I've developed the church, and I've developed, brothers and sisters in Christ in this fellowship, so that you do have someone to do life with, to go through the daily struggle, the grinds, the highs, the lows of life with, and be there for each other. Well, PJ, I've loved this conversation. Justin, thank you for this. I mean, this has been really good. I really enjoyed the message. I thought it was super important. If you're listening to this podcast, you haven't had a chance to hear the message from either this past week or 2 weeks ago, or this past week, make sure you check that out on. You can check that on our social media, our YouTube channel, vaughnforest.com. It's all located there. So I'm looking forward to continuing this series this next week, and I really think it's going to be. I really hope it's going to be helpful, especially leading up into Easter, and we're looking forward to a lot of stuff at Easter. Real quick, I want to talk about our night of worship and baptism on it's April 14th, right? The Thursday before Easter, and we're just going to have a night of worship. We're going to hang out, and we're going to have lots of folks getting baptized. Didn't you say we already had some folks signed up for that?
Yeah, the first week we had 3 people who were interested in getting baptized that night. We've got a kids' faith class before then. I know that there'll be kids who'll be interested in getting baptized. So it's going to be a special night, to be sure.
So 6 p.m. on Thursday, April 14th. If folks are interested in getting baptized, email pj.beaver@vaughnforest.com, and PJ will get you hooked up on that. Well, gentlemen, I think that's a good place for us to kind of wrap up today. Again, thank you all for taking the time to kind of talk through this idea of fellowship. I think it's super important, and I think this has been a really good discussion. So on behalf of PJ Beaver, Justin Daniel, Sound Guy Harley, and myself, thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you guys next time.